Good afternoon. Welcome to EduSet Network. Friend, as you know, we are having discussion on communication theory. So far, we have discussed the other theory, sociological theory like agenda setting theory, usage and gratification theory, dependency theory, and various other theories. And we also had a brief introduction of the different theory which relate to media. Today we are going to have a discussion on political economic theory, which is very important when we try to understand the media ownership and control. So there are various theorists who have propounded theory in regard to the political economic theory. We will try to understand only a few which one very important to know from the communication point of view. And for discussion on this very topic, we have in the studio Professor Saswati Goswami. She is presently Associate Professor in Indian Institute of Mass Communication, a premier institution of the country, and her area of interest is health communication, political communication, and conflict reporting. So I hope her knowledge and experience will help us to understand the political economy theory in a new perspective. So on her behalf, I welcome her for the EduSet lecture on the topic political economy theory of media. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir. This has been 2 days. Last we have been discussing initially communication, what is communication and various forms of communication theory. And yesterday we had a discussion on sociological theories. As I said, theories are based on certain ideologies. The sociological framework will give rise to sociological theory. Psychological framework has a number of theories too. Of course, we had not discussed it, and within this short span of time, it might not be possible for us to discuss all. So what we have done is trying to pick up a few so that we give you at least a holistic idea about what is that theory about. Before I go into political economy theory of communication, I would like to discuss a little bit about what do we mean by political economy. It's something which is being used almost every day, and most of the time we have a vague idea about it. But then this is not a class of political economy, so I just give you an idea. Marx had said that social consciousness is not determined by the collective will of individuals. Rather, it is determined by the ownership pattern. The ruling class determines what the social consciousness will be, and because they actually own the capitalist production system. And that so you would immediately understand that it is a Marxist approach towards this is a Marxist approach towards communication. Political economy perspective place emphasis on economic and political process of media ownership and control, as Mr. Kumar had already told you that it is related to enter media is discussed with the perspective of media ownership and how it actually influences the content generation. In other words, political economy is the process of generation and distribution of media content. How, under what impact content is generated, and the pattern of dissemination of the content, like why particularly this content on television or print media, and how it is done, like from which perspective it is looked at, and then how it is disseminated, how it is transmitted to various people. Is it on the front page of the print newspaper, or is it on the second page or in the third page? Whether today it will be on the first page, and the second day, next day, where will it be placed, and even whether the third day it will be continued at all. All these things has a linkage with the ownership pattern of that newspaper. That is what this theory tries to say. The theory also analyzes how the media ownership impacts the generation of content, which program will be, which issue will be picked up, and why it will be picked up in this particular context, and how will it be analyzed is dependent on the ownership. I will give you examples as in when we come to that theory particularly. It needs to be mentioned here that there are two distinct but related themes in media theory, which we will discuss here. One is political economy and other is post-colonial theory. See, I am not trying to confuse you at all. What happens is that political economy is not out of context with post-colonial theory. They are interrelated, and in fact all these theories had tried to look at the same issue from various perspectives where without delinking themselves from the basic context. So, within political economy we will consider post-colonial theory too. So, I will start with post-colonial theory. The underlying assumptions of post-colonial theory in media is that it has the power to determine our views of the world. This theory, like the political economy theory, believes that Western capitalism is the dominant framework of global media power. See, what happened when the third world countries gained their independence? We in fact we Indians also were a part of the colonial power. We were left with certain things which we didn't know how to handle, like problems of agriculture, problems of health, education, transportation, communication, so many problems we didn't know how to handle. And we were bereft of all our traditional knowledge system. The knowledge that had come down through the generations were paused and almost destroyed during the colonial regime. So, what happened when we were left with newly acquired independence? We didn't know what to do, how to look at health. Are we going to do Ayurveda, or are we going to do homeopathy, or what are we exactly going to do, what are we exactly trying to achieve? So, the reference point came out to be the Western reference point. This is what development is. This particular idea of development and modernity I will discuss in tomorrow's class when we talk about media and modernity, but this is the initial framework on which the entire post-colonial theory rests. This theory, like the political economy theory, as I said, believes that Western capitalism is the dominant framework. That is what we want to achieve. Now that we know that that is what we want to achieve, so the media behaves in that way. By dissemination of media content through the wider network, thus setting the standard of content as well as production. For example, I will just want to give you an example of Hollywood movies. We love them. We love them in such a way that when there is a movie which is technologically very sharp and very modern, we like to tell that, wow, they had done a Hollywood, like a Hollywood movie. The actions are so nice. The entire editing is so sharp, and look at the fast movement of the content. It felt like we are watching a Hollywood movie. What are we doing actually? We are referring to Hollywood as the reference point. That is the ultimate. That is what we want to achieve, and that has been ingrained inside us. Now, let me go to the next. The Western media creates the idea of the other. What happens? This actually I will not discuss now, because it will, in fact, it will take up an entire class, but I just want to give you a brief. If you see a Hollywood movie, I am just referring to movies, and even now you can go to television soap operas too. You will see an Indian or an African character who looks like an Indian or an African, or behaves like an Indian or an African. And their behavior pattern, their intonation, their voice modulation is shown in such a way that we almost believe that this is how an Indian or an African or a Indian subcontinent person should behave. That is the creation of the other, the view of how they behave. Thus generating the stereotypical idea of a non-Western. Westerns are like this, non-Westerns are like this. This first sense of domination is explored by theorists like Herman and Chomsky. That the first one I had said, that the media dissemination of information, and that information is disseminated, and thus a marker has been set of how the media should behave. This particular idea has been explained by Herman and Chomsky. Whereas media and cultural imperialism can be placed in between political economy and post-colonialism. See, it is a little bit confusing that political economy, post-colonialism, and you want to talk about cultural imperialism too, media and cultural imperialism. The second sense is explained by the theory of Edward Said's theory of Orientalism and media of representation. See, Edward Said is an eminent scholar of Orientalism who had explained how Orientals are perceived by the Western. I would suggest, if you are interested, you can go through his book called Orientalism, which will give you an extensive idea about how he views this, but this is not exactly what I want to do today. So next I would like to go on to, as I said, the cultural imperialism theory comes in between post-colonialism and political economy. I would like to go into culture industry. This was an idea of cultural industry or industries. What exactly happens, what exactly exists? It was explained by Theodor Adorno, and he in fact was actually looking at the pop music, the popular music, which we now like to call pop music, the entire effect of pop music and popular music, how it has actually changed the cultural milieu of that time. Adorno and his colleague Max Horkheimer uses the term cultural industry as synonymous with the capitalist driven entertainment industry and its mass production of commodities such as music and films. So what he had said, basically what he had said was that consumers are made to accept what the culture industry provides. Now, we always are in a debate. We say that we all like a particular form of music. Say you are most popular musician or the god of music in India is now A.R. Rahman, and we always say that Rahman, because everybody likes to listen to him, that's why he is providing it. But have you ever thought who came first? Did A.R. Rahman come first or a music came first? He had in fact provided us music, and that music we have listened to, we liked it, so now he is providing us more music. So this is not an egg and chicken question, it is a very clear question that A.R. Rahman is the one who had given us the music, and we are eating it up. In fact, we love it. I personally love it too. So that is why Adorno says that consumers actually accept what is provided by the culture industry. Horkheimer and Adorno also says that the ulterior motive of culture industry is to make the masses socially and politically inactive. This is where the philosophy is. Philosophy of the culture industry is to make the people accept, socially and politically accept whatever is provided and make them a non-thinking object. They say that the dependence of culture industry on the powerful sectors like steel, petroleum, etc. shows, of course, at that time it was steel, petroleum. Now, I would like to tell you about how the Indian media industry is owned. If you look at the cross media ownership, one newspaper, say the biggest newspaper house or the industry in India, Times of India, has a Times Now channel, has a radio channel, they have internet presence, they have business channel, they have business newspaper. Look at the cross media ownership they have. So obviously this is, according to Adorno, this is what motivates people thoroughly. If you are hooked to their media channels, you will ultimately understand what they want you to understand. So this is what is done by the culture industry. Another very important idea that Adorno and Horkheimer had talked about was standardization. What they say is that it's not about standardization of the content only, it is also the standardization of the consumer. Like we become a monolithic consumer. As consumer, 300 billion, say 3000 CDs have been sold of that particular music or particular film, shows that that is a popular film or music. So, you as a consumer is you have been reduced to a statistical number. Your personal individual likings, maybe in that entire CD you only like 5 or 4 songs or 1 song, but that is never reflected in the statistics. According to them, the consumers are forced to accept what the culture industry provides. Why does the consumer now? It's not. They also explain why the consumers accept what is provided. Now we have to look at the time and the geographical context where he had talked about. It was the industrialization and the post-industrialized economy that we have, that they had, and at that time people were busy in. Even now we are so busy in our own day-to-day life that whatever comes as a matter of entertainment, we just consume it. That is what they say, that they consume it. They are so busy with their mundane work, the activities, there is no space for them to be creatively enraged or happy with what's being provided. Consumer needs are therefore produced and controlled by the absolute power of capitalism. That is what Adorno says. Commercial popular music is the ultimate medium of social control. He saw a social control tool in music. At the popular music was actually, Adorno was very upset that Beethoven and Mozart and people like them were growing down in the people's mind. They were not at all worried. Like we are worried that Bhimsen Joshi is very less people listen to him. We are actually diluting our standard, Indian music standard. So that particular thing was there long back before it started here. In a way, if you look at Europe, you will see 19th century Europe in India right now, though that is a different topic that we can discuss someday. Therefore, according to Adorno, commercial popular music is the ultimate medium through which social control is enhanced. This, on the other hand, is marketed by promoting individual artists. If you see, one artist is promoted in such a way. Look at film industry, an artist or an actor is packaged and given to us. His or her botox-driven face and properly dressed, manicured, pedicured. That image of an artist is called, that is what he called pseudo individualization of an artist. In fact, before this entire popular music had come up, it was a music of the people, but now it's a music of a particular artist. He or she sings like this. Thus he says cultural imperialism as a stumbling block in the possibility of capitalism being overthrown. So he is saying that Marx had said that capitalism will be at some point of time capitalism has to be overthrown, and then only we will have socialism. But he says, Adorno says that this is not going to happen because of this cultural imperialism. This will act as a stumbling block because people are all almost like inane character. Their reasoning is obstructed. They have lost all power to protest. So what will happen is capitalism will stay. But there are criticism. Though I am trying to relate to the recent the Indian context, but there are criticism of his theory. Scholars like Simon Firth criticize Adorno's simplification of the consumers as a reduction of a complex process into a simple psychological effect. In fact, Firth says that he is anyways he is also Adorno Horkheimer has also made a complex entity like society into another monolithic contention called consumers, because consumer also has same the various strata. It's a complex entity. It's not possible that all consumers will behave in the same way. There will still be people who will still be looking at something else, listening to something else. So it's not easy. It's a very complex process, and you cannot actually simplify it into a simple psychological effect. Hesmondhalgh says that rather than the concept of a monolithic culture industry, what exists in reality are symbol creators. Let me explain it a little bit. He had said that even in the culture industry, it's again not a monolithic organization. There are directors, actors, writers, producers, artists, striving artists. So many classes are there, and they are also as much marginalized inside the industry as the consumers are. So they have the same dynamics going inside them. They are also as much being some of them are never given importance. Some in fact, we have even in Indian industry we had seen so many stories, bad stories about, dark stories about some people being negated, some people being thrown out, and then some people being promoted without having any quality as such. So this also happens. So it is not that industry is something which has one face and they behave like this. Adorno also is always blamed for being pessimistic, and his theory is generally blamed as cultural pessimism. Yeah, they say that culture is something which actually excites people. This is the lifeline of the people. So culture is not such a pessimistic approach. In fact, cultural revolution is through which a lot of achievement can be done. So, but in spite of that, as I said, we still can relate to Adorno's, at least some way we can relate to Adorno's theory of cultural imperialism, because this is being done in a different way, in a modified way, and from here it goes on to the media and cultural imperialism theory. Theories of media and cultural imperialism argues that it is possible for a single nation to control the economic and cultural values of another nation. We always blame America for that. We always say America had imposed all cultural values on us, and how have they done it? They had done it through media. Media, please make it wider. Media is not only television, film, print, and newspaper. It's also the products, the advertisements that we always see of various products, the marketing of certain ideas. Look at the cookery shows, all the shows in television. You will see a particular way of food being presented, particular way of music being presented, the way Grammy has been, yesterday the Grammy Awards came up, and the way the Grammy has been promoted. How much of promotion of Indian music awards are there? So this is in a sense a single nation's ethics, values, and cultural system being put into the rest of the countries. These theories have an overlap, because when I come to political economy, you will see that there is a continuity, but there is an overlap in between this theory. However, terms are not synonymous. Media imperialism might not lead to cultural imperialism. It might not be culturally always, like I'll just give you another example. We have burgers from McDonald's, and what they have done is tandoori flavored McDonald's burger, and so what they have done is through a product they had also in fact made you your palate has also been taken care of. So it's not total cultural imperialism, but media imperialism cannot succeed without cultural imperialism. You will never watch a program which is totally out of context from our own culture. So what you do is you see Indian adaptation. You will see African adaptation of certain programs. That's what we had seen in some reality shows. Thus, American value system and market-driven lifestyle is popularized through the media culture exports. Schiller was the one who had in fact given this enter media culture imperialism theory at least a theoretical framework, and he is the most cited theorist in this area. He attacked the corporate capitalist economics of American mass media in his book Mass Communication and American Empire. America has had the history of private ownership of media. That is an interesting thing. Before that it was more public broadcasting. British started it and public broadcasting was very popular, but the way the privatized media had been so successful that in fact in 1954 Britain had the first independent private television channel which was called Independent Television. So, actually the essence of privatization came down to the other parts of Europe thanks to the success story of American television. Scaler argues that American-led media commercialism reflects the advertising-driven character of the rampant US capitalist economy. Before that, even the print version had never had any advertisement, not in India. India, when print started, it started with advertising. When it started, the first page was, if you look at the Bengal Gazette, you will see the first page was full of advertisement. But those advertisements were not of products, it was of like such and such date my marriage is fixed to come, and the birthday celebration is on that day, do come, sort of things, but they were paid. Scaler feared that cultural homogenization that has been underway for years in United States now threatened to overtake the globe. I think you have all in fact heard this scare and the fear that we will be totally Americanized within very few years. We have lost our own cultural impact, and that is where in fact the entire cultural policing had started from. The cultural policing that we see now had started from there. Now, this also is not a theory which is foolproof. I want to remind you, not a single theory can be foolproof because theories always evolve according to the necessity of the time. So, I would like to go to the criticism of this particular theory. The necessary counter to the theory of media and cultural imperialism comes from Tamar Lewis and Elihu Katz's cultural resistance theory. What they did was, there was an American soap opera called Dallas, which was broadcast in few countries. One of them was Japan, and they did an audience research in Japan about that program, and they found out that Japanese had resisted that program. The Japanese thought that okay, these Americans are trying to give us the idea of how we should behave or the based of American ideas. So, we are not we don't believe on it. So, they resisted the program, and Katz and Lewis, they said that see, this is resistance. Culture cannot be just something which will be totally everybody will be overpowered by it. Some of them always will be resisted. But there is a take to it. Japan was already a capitalist country. So, obviously, a capitalist country can always recognize the other capitalist country. What about the vulnerable third world country? This is one question even Katz and Lewis had not answered. But then, one thing is very sure, if you want to look at media and cultural imperialism theory, audience research is very important. Without that, nobody can come into conclusion that okay, this is cultural imperialism. But see, because cultural imperialism is not about only national imperialism. It can be other cultural imperialism in the same country too, like the dominant culture subjugating the small cultures. So, it can be widened and made to actually the way there is a blame that North Indian culture is so much proliferating in the media now, television, film, everywhere, that people had adopted it like anything. There was once upon a time there was a write-up, I remember, where people were almost crying out about the tragedy of salwar kameez becoming the mode of dress throughout the country. That is homogenization. So, that is not that only America needs to colonize us or cultural imperialism comes from only America, it can come from the dominant group. And who is the dominant group? Who owns the media, right? This is what these theories actually come to. Now, I would like to come down to political economy theory. This is a book by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky. Chomsky is a linguist, and he had been known to have commented on various social events, political events, very strongly commenting on even Indian media. Last year he had written a very nice piece on the Indian media scenario. This book, if you look at the S, you will see it's not properly written. In fact, there is a T there. If you buy the book, you will see it. The T is that S is cut in such a way that the T is ingrained into it. In fact, he wants to say that by manufacturing content, you manufacture consent too. Chomsky is always quoted, but in fact, I would like to make it clear that Edward Herman had given a more stronger view in this area. Chomsky had done a extensive research on how media content is manufactured. Their model is called the propaganda model, and I hope it's clear. Yeah, he says that every media goes through 5 filters. There are 5 filters. First filter is the scale on which the programs are manufactured. Second is the advertising, which is the primary source of income. Third is the sourcing of mass media news. From where are you sourcing? Here comes the news agency journalism, the role of news agency journalism. From where are you exactly sourcing your media? Who is your journalist? Who is the source of your information? That is the third filter. Fourth filter is the flag, which is the negative responses. If there is a news, he had actually given hundreds of examples. It's a very interesting read, takes time, but if you look through the book, you will find that they had given extensive examples of how media information was filtered and given to us. The real information never came. The number of people, what information, in fact, say there is a war, which part of the information you will get about the war? Whether you will get the entire perspective or not, it has been decided. Flag is the negative response to an information. Say all of a sudden there is an information in the media saying such and such had been killed, or such and such person has been given an award, and that is a negative, that is not liked by the owners. So what they do is obliterate the news next moment, finishes it off, just erases it out from the public memory, or they will give a different perspective to it. How is it done? Flag is something which is very important. How is it done is, what they do is, say he cites, it's very interesting how the media houses had got calls from White Houses even for obliterating such news. So obviously the news that we ultimately receive, there is a filter from that area too. And of course, anti-communism, anything which has something to do with the communist ideology is always filtered. This is how this propaganda model is based on American television, American media. It's not based on any other countries, and that is why some people say that it's not that much effective in other countries. But if you look at the media ownership pattern, as I said, it is a cross media ownership. Obviously, there will be certain filters. There will be filters of advertising. Advertisers will dictate which program or which news to go on first page. Advertisers will dictate how many inches or centimeters of news will be covered, or minutes of news will be covered. In fact, advertisers also dictate who will be called for the debates and discussion. So this is a filter. Ultimately, we are not getting what we actually they owe us. We are getting what the advertisers wants. Then the source of media will decide. Like if I take a news media information only from government sources, obviously the government's view will come. If I take it from independent sources, independent views will come. So, but if I don't take anything else, only one source, then my news will be always filtered from that source. And then in America, communist is a dirty word, so anti-communism is something which is done. If there is a simple sense of it being a very communist or a leftist news, they filter it. This is how the corporate media works. They determine what to select, then they select what to select. Then they shape it up. The news is shaped up, and it is controlled, and it is restricted, because it serves the interest of the dominant elite groups. This is Chomsky and Herman speaking, not me. What they do is, the topics are selected and the concerns are distributed. What exactly is concerns is, Say I want to generate a discussion in my television channel on as simple as something called direct cash transfer, which is a very interesting topic right now. What is expected of the news house is that they will have someone who is anti-direct cash transfer, someone who is pro-direct cash transfer, someone who has done it for government, someone who has experience in Mexico if possible, where supposedly direct cash transfer is very successful, call someone from there, and someone who had written extensively on it. It will be a balanced view. But if you go back today and look at any debate, and you will see that mostly it is one track discussion. They in fact they fight between themselves and agree. You will see, just go and look today. So that concerns are distributed in such a way that actually the distribution is not equitable. Then out of the direct cash transfer, only one issue will be maybe emphasized, which will serve the corporate interest. And the issue will be framed in such a way that you will not think that there are other views to that issue. And the information will be filtered. You will see the anchor will all of a sudden, okay, no, I would like to listen to you. The information is filtered there. And the debate is so bounding that you cannot go from what the anchor had already decided. You have to remember one thing, the anchors or the journalist belongs to that particular group. They are not individuals when they are doing a job. So this is how the big media behaves. The big media will eat the next media, will eat the next media, and the small media will be obliterated from the entire dimension. So when you talk about alternative media, look at the situation of alternative media right now, how much of policing is going on. We know how people have been indicted because of their Facebook posting. So a little bit of equations in Indian perspective too. So thank you, you write what you are told. Thanks corporate news is what the American media do. We couldn't control the people without you. This is a very jocular way of thanking the corporate news, and this is what corporate news does in America. So what happens? Conformity is the new individuality. You conform to an idea, so you are individually decided. Whereas actually you have, in a group, you have been motivated to conform to that idea. You are not individual. You have in fact decided because everybody had decided. What did Milton say long back? They who have put out the people's eyes reproached them of their blindness. You have been blinded, and then you are told that, see, you are blind, you can't see, let me show you. But again, Chomsky and Herman is not beyond criticism too. They are also criticized because they had not very extensively looked at the complexities of the powerful elites. The elites also has their own complexities. One house is against the other. So a news, it is a very complex situation if you watch a news being broadcast in two different channels or different newspaper. You will see that they are actually not conforming to each other. They have their own business interest. Business interest again is not homogeneous. Business interest again is very non-homogeneous. They have various business interests, and accordingly they will behave. So the powerful elites is not again a monolithic thing. It has its own complexities. This is an oversimplification, in fact, that government and large corporations have common interest. It's totally oversimplification. They have some common interest, yes, they do, because they are doing business in a government system, and the government, at least 90% of the business and dealings are done by the government, but then they have other interests too. And post globalization, it had totally changed, because it's not it's not just national national business now, it's international business too. We know how international houses are with the foreign direct investment coming up, opening up of the economy. So much of money is coming from various areas. So it's not about the government and the large corporation having common interest all the time. there are spaces where common interests are there. There are spaces where they have in fact they are at they are actually fighting on that area. So this is not built into the Chomskyan Harman model. They do not acknowledge that the audience may resist and reject mass media propaganda. This is most important, because it's as what does the cultural resistance theory say, that it's not that every day it will be accepted. Some of the programs are not accepted. Even in television, every program doesn't enjoy the same TRPs which they are after, because people had rejected. So similarly, that there is a resistance from there can be a resistance from the audience is not built into this theory. But if you look at the entire thing that I have talked right now, before I go into any questions that you have, the political economy perspective, the propaganda model, or the cultural imperialism perspective, you will see that it is a continuous process, and it basically looks at the effect of ownership on the media content. Now, I just say we have reality shows, and most of the reality shows are from are actually totally taken from the Western media. I won't say only American media. We have number of soaps, like we had soaps from Mexico, which had been adapted to Indian situations too, and with brilliant effect. If you remember a very if there is if you obviously won't remember, but there has been a lot of discussion on it. There was the first Indian soap called Hum Log. Hum Log was the first Indian soap which was actually modeled on a Mexican soap opera. So in fact, if that can be adapted and given to us with an Indianized form, so can be so many things. The problem right now is that we have in fact so much of media presence is there. People really don't have, the producers really don't have that much of time to adapt it to the Indian situation, and feeding us those program has been very easy. And of course, thanks to the internet, everything is just right now, here and there. So this immediacy again obliterates and washes away a lot of space where people could have been the ideas could have been adapted to Indian. The effort of McDonald in tenderizing our burger has not been very much visible in the cultural industry. So you have music which sounds almost like any Western music. Just look at a few Indian albums, you will see it sounds like any Western music, and we like it. So if we like it, why are we liking it? Because we don't have that critical space of mind that again I am invoking Adorno. Yeah. So this is how, if you look at the way you consume media and the media what is given to you, you will see that all these theories actually fit into us. Like say there is a problem, ethnic problem in any part of India. Right now it's in Assam. You will see 3 newspapers presenting it, or 3 news channels presenting it in 3 different ways. Someone might just give a scroll and pass it on. Someone might generate a discussion, and someone might just have a documentary on that. So is it not as important to everyone? But then the ownership pattern says that we don't have that many viewers from that part of the country all over the world for this channel. If it is an English channel, again we are catering to the niche audience. So we cannot just spend so much of transmission time on that. So we will do only a scroll, someone will do what it. So again political economy comes in. So this is how you relate to the theories. I hope I have been able to be clear about these 2-3 theories. If you have any confusion.
Yeah, well, you will explain all these 3 theories. But one thing, because still there are thin line, or we can say that some points where are overlapping points where a student can get confused. So can you briefly explain again, and then we will move on the particular topic. All 3 things.
See, the post-colonial theory, what does it say? I would like to also like you to look at it when I talk about it. That the power to determine our views of the world depends on media is what the post-colonial theory says. Media disseminates content, and likewise our framework is made. The culture industry theory of Adorno says that culture is so overpowering that they make us actually a non-thinking entity and conform to the ideas what the media has been propagated. See, it's a continuity from the first to the second. Culture, industry and media theory of Schiller's, what he says is that there is a continuous process of the American mass media. We can always say not American, a dominant mass media to make it a colony, make the other nations a colony of their ideas. Imperialism is colony of another person, another group. So that way the ideas are propagated in such a way that you mentally become a colony of a bigger nation. And what does political economy theory say? That how is it done? It is done by the corporate media, because all media are corporate houses. Of course, America doesn't have a strong tradition of public broadcasting, which British still does. BBC is still very strong public broadcasting house. In America, what they do is the corporate media filters the news according to the advertiser, according to the dictate of the government, the flag, according to the scale of the information. Like if there is a huge war, they will minimize and give you the information. And of course, according to whether it conforms to communism or not. If it is a if it has a communist tendency, it is obliterated. So the ownership pattern in all these three areas, the owners decides what these four areas, owners decide what will be projected and given to you, and this is what I consume, and I become a non-thinking person, like Adorno says, and I behave the way the corporates want me to behave or think.
Presently, what we see that do you believe that the Chomsky propaganda model of 5 filters, what he talk about in the era of industrial revolution, or in the society was mostly agriculture, industrial, so that still exists, explaining the information society which is now coming up in all developing countries?
See, developing
because the majority and minority proportion has changed significantly in 21st century.
That's true, but then information society that we are so proud of is not exactly the way it is, because if you just go to a small village, not a small village, even a big village in India, you will see how much of media information actually they receive. There are one or two newspapers coming there, one or two people reading it. Only the Dish TV channels, which has very few options, maybe the satellite only terrestrial channels. Then even if you have a television set, which is costly, and then you should have electricity, which is again non-existent mostly, so you are left with radio. Okay. So what is the information society all about? Information society is a very urban system, and urban people has, as Adorno said, very less time to really think about creatively about what's happening in media. We just consume. We put on the radio in the morning while you are on the car, listen to the songs, whatever is given as news, come back in the evening. If you look at the news, you are not happy, you go to a reality show and look at it. So what is the information society? In a sense, Chomsky and Herman's model is, because it was done in, but 2010 they had again revised their entire propaganda theory and shown that it's still applicable to America, even America. Okay. So that, because see, ultimately we are in a globalized situation now, where the ownership pattern, the way industry is run, all are almost similar with in developing and developed country, except that few sectors are still controlled by government, very few sectors. Everywhere it's being given up to the privatization sector, and a lot of money coming from foreign direct investment from abroad. So that obviously the entire politics and the economics and the business is done in a more globalized system. So I think in a sense we can always relate to Chomsky's model more than even Adorno's model. Political economic theories seems to be more applicable right now in India.
Okay. So now let us take question from the, any questions?
Take the microphone.
When you mentioned
Yeah, it's okay. You ask us.
You mentioned about the audience.
This way. Yeah.
You mentioned about the audience research in the Western countries.
Mm.
I want to know that is there any audience research in India also?
Yeah, we in fact All India Radio does an audience research every month. Obviously, because it's a government venture, so it's not published everywhere. And there are few organizations in India who are doing good audience research too. Only point is putting them into a theoretical framework and coming with the results. It might not be, it is of interest for only the communication experts or people like us who teaches communication. So maybe it's not available in the market, but there are good audience research coming, and there is a very good book by Nalin Mehta on television in India, which has a huge lot of audience research in a different way. I'm not saying just taking a questionnaire and fill it up sort of thing, but he had looked at the entire phenomenon of television coming to India, and the problems that we had faced at that time, how it had shaped Indian television. So its research is there.
Okay. Next question.
I have a question on TRP system. As far as TRP concerned, they are related to only some limited parts of India.
Yeah.
Still, they are followed by all the media houses because they have business interest. So we have to follow the business interest to maximize the profits. So we should have TRPs all over India. Why is not that done?
Yeah, this is something which is very costly actually. TRP is a very costly technology. So it's not. They are trying to make it more all India, but then right now they are concentrating on the metros, because see, again I say television is a medium. Still in India, it's a medium of the rich in a sense, the urban and the rich. How many poor people really look at it or have time to or have resource to actually watch television? So ultimately the urban decides. So that's why the urban has still been taken into consideration and TRPs are done. But obviously very soon it will come down to the other cities too, very soon, because there has been a move.
We have to say Doordarshan has the best TRPs in India because
Yeah, obviously.
everyone watches
Doordarshan has
Yeah.
the reach that nobody has. But the access again cannot be decided by the rich, because access is something which depends on you. You don't want to watch Doordarshan, even that channel, even your Dish TV has it, you won't watch. So, but then those people who want to watch, they will watch. So, this access and rich dilemma is still standing in India very much, very strongly.
Okay, now your question. No. That side? No question. Okay. So I think a lot of concern about the audience research, TRP, and these are the things now also part of the developing countries are doing well, as you said, as All India Radio and other agencies are taking interest into all this. So when we go through the topography of the media in developing countries, so as you said while explaining the theory, there is a kind of emphasis should be on Indianization on the things, or we say if another talk about another country, some kind of element must be taken from the larger section of the people who talks about. So shift on this line is being now felt, or it's just in theory?
This shift is something, again see, this is again my maybe a chicken and egg question, that will the consumers demand it or the industry will decide? In fact, this is where propaganda models come in very strongly, is that the advertisers dictates what will go on air. Once upon a time, there were few serials on television when Doordarshan used to actually sell the time. They didn't sell the program. What they did was sell the time, and someone sponsors a program and broadcast it according in that time. The advertisers felt in between a serial that this was not very, it's not earning the amount of TRPs it should have earned, so they had taken it off with very unceremoniously. And then we see in private television some serials going for years at an end, never ever stopping, and no chance of ever stopping, just because the TRP is high. So it's not about only Indianization, it's about the niche audience that they will cater to. Like those soap operas cater to the housewives who are supposedly the decision maker of what will be bought at home. The housewives and the children, the mother and the children are supposed to be the consumers, the major consumers in the middle class society. It's, see, only the middle class woman can decide what she wants, not the lower middle class. The story actually is framed on their likings and dislikings. It's a middle class family that we'll see, or an upper middle class family. The entire saga of a very upper class family caters to the imagination of the lower middle class and the middle class family, and that will go in us. So this entire Indianization is actually is not something that everybody attempts. Every program need not do an Indianization. You have certain reality shows which is typical adaptation, typically the way it's done. Like in Indian food, say in Indian food, how do we provide food? Like when when someone is coming to our home, it's more about being neat and clean, not about the decoration. You have katori balls where you put the food, not with a sprig of coriander or a sprig of what do we call pudina and all those things. That is not Indian. But when you have a cookery show, even for Indians, you will see the decoration part more important than the content, taste of the food. People are rebuked because you have decorated so badly, you don't know how to chop. Look at in any Indian housewife, they chop better than anybody else, but they do with their own tools. We don't have that 5 standing tools on which you chop the things. So what we are doing is, in fact, making the traditional housewife feel very bad about herself. Okay, I know nothing. So what as I don't know anything, even the upma that I have been cooking, even my idli are so badly, in fact, given on the plate, because you put it on a bowl and serve it. So let us buy some packed upma and packed idli. You know how this works. Advertisers works there. You have a small child cutting out cardboard hands to make it easy for the mother to clean the clothes. That is, the mother is to clean the clothes, already equated. What about a working mother? A washing machine is never sold to a working mother. If you look at it, at the advertisements, the washing machine is always sold to the housewife to make her life beautiful. Why? Because this is the niche audience she is going to decide. Otherwise, every working mother will buy a washing machine. She has no option. So this is where the Indianization comes in. Because this is the new gadget which is creeping into the Indian system now through dowry too. Like it's a part of the tross that the woman carries is a washing machine too. This is how it had crept into our Indian psychology. This is Indianization. Otherwise, the entire concept of Indianization in programs has been in the dressing up, gawky dressing and gaudy dresses that's being propagated, and the wedding market that you see, the customized wedding that you see, it is our Indianization through advertisements, which actually, and if you look at it, even the wedding market, the sponsors of those wedding market may be a sister concern of the owners of the media houses. Just a little bit of research will show it. So this is what Indianization is.
Okay. So, well friends, with this word we conclude the lecture. I thank all of you for watching the lecture, and on behalf I thank Professor Saraswati Goswami for giving such an insightful lecture on this very topic, explaining with example. So it all help us to understand this topic in a new perspective. So I again thank her, and all of you thank you very much.